Hello and welcome to my Blender tutorial where I'll be showing you how to recreate my spinning geometric shape. First of all, we're going to take our panel from down here and we're going to open up the geometry nodes panel and we're going to create a new geometry node tree on our cube. First, we can delete our input, we won't be needing that. Instead, we'll be starting with a curve primitive, curve circle. We want to be instancing that in our geometry. However, we want this to be rotated 90 degrees. To do that, we take a transform node and we take it on the X and rotate it 90 degrees. What we want to be doing is we want to be instancing our shapes on the outside of this circle. So straightforward, we want to instance points. Now, our circle has disappeared because we aren't instancing anything yet. What we want to be doing is, since we want geometry with any number of sides, the best way to do that is by taking another curved circle. So we duplicate that and instance that on our circle. But what we want to be doing, we want to be taking that and we want to be taking that to about 0.5. Now, as you can see, that it's not aligned in the right way. We want these to be spreading out from the center. So in order to do this, we need to affect the rotation. Take the spline parameter node. What this does, this takes the spline, which is our original curved circle, and that takes it the start point from 0 to 1. Now each of the points on there, each of these 32 points will have a number. And it takes that number and it's from 0 to 1 divided by 32. Now we take our factor and input that into the rotation. However, this has done a few things that we need to change. First of all, it's affected each of the X, Y, and Z equally. So what we want to do is we want to take a combine X, Y, Z node and plug that into there. Now it looks closer, but not quite. Instead of the X, we want to be affecting the Y. So we want to take this and we want to take our map range. So map range, plug that into there and go from 0 to minus 2 times pi. And you can see we have lovely circles pointing outwards from the center. Now to make this look a little better, we need to fill in our circles. So we take that and we want to fill those circles. Fill curve, nice and straightforward. And I found that n-gons look better for this. Less geometry, less to work with. From here, we want to affect the scale because we don't want them all to be the same scale all of the time. If we want it to go up and down, in and out, then that's like a wave. So we want a sine wave. And as we know, a sine wave goes from -1 to 1. So we take our math node, take that sine, plug that into our scale. So if we want to control how big this goes with the sine wave, we take another map range node, -1 to 1, and we want our scale to be around about where it was, give or take a bit. So I went from 0.7 to 1.3. So in order to make this animate as we go through our timeline, we want to take the scene time node and plug that into our sine. So now that we press play, you can see that that's going in and out. But we want to be able to control the speed of this. So we take another math node and we make it multiply. So we can control exactly how fast this goes. I set mine to about 5. So that it would loop as the timeline loops. So once again, map range, and I know that my timeline goes from 0 to 250 in this case. Because this is a sine wave, we want our inputs to be between 0 and 2 pi. But you can see that it's now going really slowly, and that's because instead of seconds, I would use the frame value. Like I said, 250 frames, 250 frames, using that frame value. Now, what we want to do is also rotate these. First of all, in order to see the rotation of the points, we need to not be a circle. So I'll take these down to a triangle by making 3 points on our curved circle. Now, you can't rotate these before you instance them. You have to do this after. In order to do this, you take a rotate instances node. So search rotate instances node. Now, we don't want to do these all by the same amount. That wouldn't look right. We want to do this by a random amount each time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a random value node and plug that into the rotation. Now, as you can see, this doesn't quite look right because they're all rotating on both the X, Y, and Z axis. So once again, we take our combine X, Y, Z, and this time we only want to do it on the Z axis. And as you can see, they're all still pointing outwards, but are rotated in different ways. As you can see, they're not spinning. Now, in order to do this, you need to add a value to that rotation. Nice and straightforward. Take a math node and add a number to that. As we ramp this up, they're each rotating on their axis. However, we don't want to do this with keyframes, we want to do this with time. So once again, taking this time, taking the map range and adding it to that rotation. And now you can see as our timeline goes, it's rotating as we go. Once again, we want to be controlling the speed of this, the same as we did with our scaling. So where this is going in and out, you have that control. I want to take this same multiply. I want to Shift D to duplicate and add it before we do that rotation. I chose to take this down to a different value so that everything is not perfectly in sync. And I found that 4 was a good number. Now that we've got the action looking how we are, this is the geometry nodes. I will full screen that in case you want to see what that is. And now we can take this and we need to make it look good. So in order to do that, we need to do a set material node. In order to do this the way I did it, we need to actually realize the instances. We open up our node editor and we turn this into a shader editor. Because we want this to look stylized and quite nice, we don't need the principal BSDF. Instead, what I'm going to do is a simple diffuse BSDF. And now you can see that they're all white, except they're not looking very good because of our scene world. Now, in order to do this, to make it really simple, I went into the world settings and rather than a background, I just made this really simple and I just changed this to an input and a value of 0.8. Going back to our object, we don't want this to be white. We could have this blue, we could have it red, green, whatever you like. But obviously the way I did it was I did it with a really funky rainbow color. So in order to get that effect, we need to add a converter color ramp. We set both of these to be red, perfectly red. Copy that over, paste that there, add it into the color. I take this, we change it to HSV, and we change this to far. And as you can see now, we have a rainbow effect. What we need to do is map this to the object. In order to do that, we take a texture, gradient texture, and plug that into the factor. Now this is nearly what we want, except this is going linear from left to right. Instead, we want this to be radial. Now it still doesn't quite look right, and that's because we're using the wrong texture coordinate system. So Node Wrangler add-on, Control T, give ourselves a bit more room here, and we want to, instead of using generated, use the object coordinates. Once again, still not looking quite right, and that's because we need to rotate those on the X 90 degrees as we did with our original circle. And there we have our red going orange, yellow, green, all the way back round to red again. Now, the final touch I had on this is what I did was I added freestyle. I added an outline to each of these shapes. Really simple effect, really easy to do, really quite effective. In order to do that, we go to our render properties and click freestyle. Easy as that. In order to get that looking how we want, we go to our view layer properties, scroll down to freestyle, and now we have all of our properties that we can affect. I chose my line to be 5 and I took the color and put that to white. So now that white line on this off-white background will look really good in our render. So what we can do now is we can set up our camera. So we can press 0 on our numpad. We can press N and go view, lock camera to view, and get this centered up. Then we can change our output properties to 1080 square, getting that looking nice, zoom in a bit, and then we can unlock our camera from our view. Press F12 for a test render, and that's looking great. One last thing to add is I want to take our color management and we want to change that to standard, and that way we get the exact colors we've chosen and it just makes everything pop that much more. From here, the rotating is simple, and so what I did was I took our cube object, took the item, we go back to our first frame, on our rotation set a keyframe on the Z, and we go all the way to the end, and we want to do spin it round once, 360 degrees, I again, and that way when we play you can see that that rotates around on its Z axis. As you can see, there's some artifacting on here, and that's where the objects are casting a shadow on each other. Not to worry, that's easily fixed. If we are to go into cycles, we can go into the object properties here, and we can go down to our visibility, ray visibility, and turn off shadow. And that way you don't get the shadows on here. Unfortunately, this isn't supported in Eevee, and it will take a little longer for you to do it on your render times. But trust me, the effect is worth it. Thank you for watching my tutorial. I hope you learned something useful. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to show you or go a little more in depth with. Like and share, and I'll see you on the next one.